Lesson 2. The alchemical theory focuses on the three alchemical principles, which are sulfur, mercury, and salt. Then give an outline of the theory and the role of the menstruum in the series of experiments we offer. Then we study the vegetable kingdom and the link between the vegetable realm and the esoteric aspect of our work. After you acquire some operative skill, we shall resume the study of the four elements. After the preliminaries of our first experiment, alchemical practice will become the most important part of our course. Personal experience has taught us that many errors, which cause loss of time and material, can be avoided for the most part through warnings and specific instructions. To record in writing the experience gained by personal work is impossible. At this level, our course will cover the detailed explanations of all basic experiments in spagyrics and alchemy. We shall do our best to clarify the differences between the chemical aspect and the alchemical aspect of processes which are used during the operations. Finally, we shall tap information from the important collection of documents of the time period of the alchemy chemistry separation, and there we will find some data to help uncover the meaning of ancient books through the understanding of the chemistry of that time period. In the miscellaneous section, we shall examine the alchemical aspects of the Kabbalah and traditional texts, as well as the basic rules necessary for the reading of alchemical symbolism. Whenever possible, we shall examine two different equipment setups, an easy, relatively expensive one, and a more demanding setup, but very economical. This choice comes from the fact that spagyrics and, at a higher level, alchemy are self-initiated paths. The advance on these paths depends for the most part upon each one's esoteric attainments. Two phases can be considered: preparation and realization. Realization often requires a rather long period of time regardless of the significance of the material. On the other hand, preparation can be considerably shortened by using sophisticated equipment. Anyway, each one must maintain a certain balance between inner development and experimental achievements. It is up to each one, according to his conscience and humility, to choose at every moment the path which he thinks best for him to follow. Alchemical philosophy. We believe that for equilibrium in a personal path, theory and practice must confirm each other. The lessons present first a light theoretical aspect, so that we can start practical work without delay. We shall deepen the theory as the practical work progresses. On the other hand, we are convinced that a preliminary, rapid but broad overview is the basis of an alchemical perspective and constitutes a good foundation for a detailed study which specializes and focuses on specific points. In this way, we more quickly obtain a coherent and unitary view of the alchemical process. As this second lesson marks the beginning of practical work, each of us should realize the significance of an appropriate state of mind for successful work. In the beginning, we cannot pretend to be an alchemist or philosopher, but we must strive to attain the corresponding state of mind. As alchemy is both spiritual and material, it requires that some caution be taken in both domains. The material aspect will be the object of a study in the practical part of this lesson, and in the philosophical part we shall touch upon the spiritual aspect several times. The alchemical concept says that repetitive work on matter opens its pores. It actually means that matter, salt for example, becomes easily receptive to its sulfur, but can be irrevocably contaminated by an impurity. And it also means that the psychic sensitivity of matter can be increased. If the operator has a positive radiation, matter can be improved. Conversely, if the radiation is negative, matter will be adversely affected. Also likely if an uninitiated person comes close and sees the matter. Prior to any alchemical work, we must energize ourselves, all the more because our work requires that we refine matter. Our laboratory must be closed to the uninitiated and the matter removed from his/her view and presence. This is also why the alchemical path is a solitary one, at the most for a couple or a family. Our work is sometimes active, sometimes passive, and our laboratory is also an oratory, where the old saying, ora et labora, applies: pray and work. We shall often return to another primary alchemical idea. All creation happens through duality, that is to say that the undifferentiated, original elements separate into positive, active part and a passive, negative part. The positive part is always present and constantly tries to act on its own initiative. The negative part, because of its passive character, does not act, but can represent an obstacle or prison to the active part. Generally, man cannot activate the positive part. His role solely consists in freeing these positive forces which will then act by themselves. We hope that your experimental work will soon demonstrate to you the truth of this important principle. Alchemical theory. In order to understand each other, it is necessary that the meaning attributed to words be constant and identical in all cases. Yet, it is not the case in alchemy. In our science, the meaning of words often has nothing to do with the meaning usually given to them. Thus, the three principles sulfur, mercury, and salt have nothing in common with what is generally understood by those words. According to the alchemical theory, all things and all beings possess a sulfur, a mercury, and a salt. These are principles which concentrate spiritual energies. The sulfur concentrates the soul's energies, the mercury the spirit's energies, and the salt, the body's energies. One of the greatest spagyric and alchemical secrets is the method to separate these three principles. Note, however, that in vegetable spagyrics the separation of these three principles is not always necessary. The separation of sulfur and mercury on one side and salt on the other may be enough. Let's take a look at difference between an allopathic remedy and a spagyric elixir. In most cases, the making of allopathic remedies follows the classical chemical method, and thus spagyric sulfur and mercury are eliminated. The remainder is what in spagyrics is called salt. Therefore, such remedies can act on the material aspect, the body, but in no way can they act on the person's psyche, that is the spiritual aspect. Alchemical or spagyric elixirs, on the other hand, retain the three principles, and, though his own action, the alchemist does his best to keep them. We have a soul medicine which contains both negative body elements and positive elements of life. The spagyric method is separation, purification, and reunification. It is consistent with the etymology of the word spagyri, which means to separate and to reunite. In our first simplified experiments, the theory outlines the following approach. The sulfur and the mercury are extracted with an alcohol. As we have not studied the art of the acquer, how to effect changes or penetrate further, we choose an alcohol which is ready-made and as strong as possible in the vegetable realm. An alcohol made from wine will do. Then, when the salt is separated, we purify it through fire, or through water and fire. We use the purified salt to purify in turn the sulfur-mercury mixture before moving on to the cohibation. This elixir has both physical and spiritual properties. The physical properties can be found in a botanical book under the heading of the particular plant we use in our experiment. The problem of determining the spiritual effect can be solved after we study the signatures of nature. In the case of balm, also called lemon balm, the psychic part is that of understanding and tolerance. Alchemical practice. We mentioned that it is important to respect the laws of nature and alchemy, and to allow for free expression. Before starting work, we must have the safety of our laboratory in mind. Set it up according to legal safety rules. Your physical presence is also desirable during your experiments. Finally, a fire extinguisher can be very useful in certain circumstances. We know that invisible and spiritual elements are important in alchemy and spagyrics. But as we do not possess the appropriate extraction liquid called the menstruum, and as its making requires the study of methods of classical and philosophic distillation, we are therefore both in an advantageous and disadvantageous position. Our advantage is that if we were to possess a very refined menstruum, very aqueous in the alchemical sense, that is to say penetrating and strong, we would have to maintain in our laboratory a certain behavior and take several precautions which we shall study later on. On the other hand, the inconvenience is that our liquid has a weaker power of extraction. Consequently, the operations are longer. It is best to learn good habits from the beginning. A separate and discreet workplace is best. Avoid putting the product in contact or in the presence of people or things that could upset them. Limit the access of the laboratory to your spouse and immediate family. Once you secure the location, take the necessary safety precautions, and before starting the operations, you should psychically energize yourselves. For the time being, each one may choose the method they like best: breathing, praying, concentration, meditation, etc. We do not advise occult methods, for they require, among other things, knowledge of planetary attributions and elements of the signature theory. Once we have dealt with these considerations, we approach the practical aspect of our work. Here are the steps. Pulverize the balm into a very fine powder, starting with the leaves. Then, cut the twigs in small pieces, 2 to 3 millimeters long. During this operation, try concentrate on the fact that your hands radiate and positively charge the balm. Avoid breathing the dust from the plant and protect your respiratory tract with a surgical mask or by placing in a vertical position a glass sheet 30 to 40 centimeters, 12 to 16 inches, wide between the product and yourself. This glass sheet won't disturb your work and it is a sufficient protection. Put the balm into a wide mouth jar. An instant coffee or mason jar is adequate. Separate the plant powder into 2 parts, for example colon. Keep 40 grams, 1.4 ounces, and set the rest aside. The next operation only requires the 40 grams of the plant. The weight is not critical. Wait for the first Thursday of the waxing moon and energize yourself. Before you start the second phase of this work, pour the alcohol slowly on the plant, in small amounts so that the plant is thoroughly soaked. Stop pouring the alcohol as soon as the liquid is above the vegetable mass by 1/2 to 1 centimeter, 1/4 to 3/8 inches. Hermetically close the flask. In Spagyrics, the operation which consists of pouring alcohol on can be considered closest to the operation of fecundation. For the balm, therefore, the most favorable time for this operation is the first Thursday of the waxing moon. Wrap the flask to protect it from light. It can simply be placed in a cardboard box. In winter, place it in a warm room, close to a source of heat. A temperature of 19 C, 66.2 F, is satisfactory. Let it macerate for 2 weeks. For the rest of the operation, you may want 2 flasks in maceration. To be more exact, it is a maceration circulation, therefore the flask should be more high than wide, about a 3/1 ratio, and only filled to 1/3 of its height. After the 2 weeks, place a glass funnel in an empty flask and block the open bottom of the funnel with some cotton. In this case, absorbent cotton is preferable to a filter. Pour the maceration into the funnel. As soon as the liquid is through, carefully press the balm residue with a flat piece of wood to recover all possible liquid. The liquid should be green now. When the operation is complete, quickly close the receiving flask. Before you go on, make sure that there is nothing combustible or volatile in the workspace. Pour the solid residue into the dish and place the dish on the gas burner, which is off. Mix the